I am going to get out of our tech slide here and get on over to our handout for the session, which Lindsay is going to be sharing for you in the chat. So you will want to look at your chat box and find the handout, the virtual handout, so you can follow along as we go through our tips. So I am Susan Wettenkamp-Brandt. I am the Senior Manager for Educational Technology and Digital Literacy at Literacy Minnesota. And I'm the leader of our statewide technology and distance learning team. I also have a role in direct service. I supervise distance learning and digital literacy work at Literacy Minnesota's Open Door Learning Centers here in St. Paul and Minneapolis. And I am a user of Google Drive. I am in Google Drive pretty much every day at my job, and I find it extremely helpful for collaborating with folks like Jody from Department of Ed and Lindsay from Atlas, who are not Literacy Minnesota employees, and so they don't have access to all the services that we have internally at the agency. So Google Drive is our way to collaborate across agencies, and I know that a lot of you out there are probably doing similar things, or maybe your district is using Google Drive as its primary file sharing service. And Google Drive has many wonderful features. And at the same time, many people tell me every day, oh my gosh, somebody shared this file with me and I can't find it. Or I know I just worked on this thing, where is it? I can't find my stuff. This is a common refrain, and it's one that I occasionally say myself, right? I'm not going to say that there's some silver bullet, which if you just do this one cool trick, you will master Google Drive and you'll never lose anything again. Unfortunately, life isn't that easy or simple, but I do have 9 tips that may help you get your drive under control, wrangle it a little bit, and help you feel a little less frustrated in your day-to-day working in your Google Drive. So what we're going to do is we're just going to walk through those tips on that handout, and I'm going to show you right in my Google Drive how it works, and we'll talk through ways that you can hopefully use those things to make your work life a little more efficient. There are 9 of them. We have 45 minutes. I don't know if we will get to all 9 of them. I will give it a shot. But if we don't, and you want to follow up on the rest of them, you'll have the handout and you can always read through those on your own time. And like Lindsay said, feel free to throw questions in the chat at any time. I'm happy to take questions. We're not a huge group either, so if you wanted to just raise your hand and be called on to call your question out loud, that works very well as well. So with all of that, I am going to dive right in. And just quick, I'm going to ask everybody to give me a thumbs up if you are able to get into the handout and see the 9 tips for getting organized in Google Drive. So if you can find the thumbs up on your participant list, show me a thumbs up if you're able to get there. You can do it in the chat too. Some people throwing it in the chat, some people doing it on the participant list. It's all good. If you are not able to get to that link that that Lindsay shared with you, drop Lindsay a chat and she will make sure that you get that link and can get into it. All right, I'm not seeing any no's coming through, so hopefully everybody's good. All right. And is everybody seeing the handout on my screen too after I closed out of the slide deck? Let me know if not, because that would be very confusing if you can't see it. So. All right, we are going to start with tip number 1, which is add a shortcut to your drive. So this is a really helpful tip if you are collaborating with other folks and they are sharing materials, files or folders with you, and you want to be able to find them. Oh, you're still on the slide deck. Oh dear. Well, I'm going to stop share and I'm going to re-share. Now you should be able to see it. I had a sneaking suspicion that that was going to happen. That's why I asked. All right, so tip number 1, add a shortcut to Google Drive. What this does is when somebody sends you a file or a folder, normally you're going to look for that file or that folder in your shared with me section on Google Drive. But the shared with me is hard to organize. It's just sort of a big list of stuff, right? And that means when somebody shares something with you, it can be hard to find it again after you get that initial link in your email saying somebody shared this thing with you. So using add a shortcut to your drive allows you to put that document in your own file system. You can put it in a folder and label that folder and use other tools to find it again later. And it lives in your regular drive instead of over here in shared with me. So you don't have to remember, was that document one I made, or was that somebody else made that and they shared it with me? I don't remember. Well, it doesn't matter. If you've made a shortcut, it's in your drive like all your other stuff. So to do that, if you go into your shared with me, and let's say I want to make a shortcut to this folder of materials that Department of Ed shared with all of us at the fall managers meeting. And I just like, I know I'm going to lose this. I don't want to lose it. So I'm going to make a shortcut and put it in my drive. I just right click on that. And I'm going to find this link that says add shortcut to drive. And then it lets me decide where I want to put that. By default, it's just going to land in my head folder, my drive folder. But I don't have to put it there. I could go in here and choose any one of my different folders that I've got set up in my drive, and I can organize it however I want. And in fact, I'm just going to put it in my head drive in this case, but I wouldn't have to do that. I could organize it. And then when I click that add shortcut, come back over here to my drive, I should be able to find it right here, Fall ABE Manager Meeting Participant Materials. There's that folder. Now, I can tell that this is a shortcut and not original file that I created in my drive by the little icon next to it, which shows this little arrow next to the folder icon. So this folder is one that I've made. It's I'm the owner, it's in my drive. This one with the little arrow next to it is not, it's a shortcut to the original. And you'll also see this icon here shows that these are folders that are shared. They're collaborative folders. The ones without that are private things that are just mine. All right, and I see a couple of things coming in the chat. And Laura's saying that she's seen that, but has not used it. So already we're helping people find a tip that will help them find stuff. That's great. Yeah, and I use this a ton because people are sharing things with me all the time. And you'll see a lot of these things in my folder are not things that I own. They are things that have been shared with me. It's a super useful little tip. All right, we're going to go back and go on to tip number 2. And tip number 2 is pretty straightforward. It's use folders and folders within folders, right? But it's a little bit more than that too, which is that one thing I see teams working on stuff do that I think creates confusion and leads to people losing stuff is that they start a new project or a new team and they just start making documents. And then after they've been working on this project or in this team for a month or 2 months and they've got a bunch of documents, after the fact, they realize, you know, we really need to organize this stuff. And they start making folders and putting all the files in the folders. And I think that's the backwards way to go about it. You want to start the folder file system structure from day one. Before you make any files, make the folder. And then share the folder with everybody in your team, because then you don't have to remember to share any of the documents specifically. As soon as you make a new document in that folder, it automatically is going to be shared with everybody who has the folder. And you don't have the problem of, I made a bunch of stuff and now it's all just loose in my drive. And when I move it, now everybody can't find it because I've reorganized it, right? So make the file structure first and share the folders rather than the documents, and then start making the documents as you move forward with your project. And I am going to stop and see if there's any questions in the chat. And there is. Darla says, is it possible to remove a shortcut? And that is a great question, which I have never actually looked at, but I think the answer to the question is probably yes. So let's just find out if we can answer Darla's question. So I'm actually going to scroll down here because there are probably some things I don't need anymore, like land committee descriptions, which I don't need anymore because I'm not part of the land board anymore. Let's see if I can remove it. Let's see. Can I do that? I am not seeing an option. Move this Zoom toolbar out of the way. Ah, yes, remove. It is right here. I just couldn't see it because it was hiding underneath my Zoom toolbar. But yes, you can remove an object the same way you would trash an object that you own. So thanks for the question, Darla. That was a good one. Any other questions about making shortcuts to things or making folders and sharing folders and how things shared within folders get shared to collaborators? I'll give you 30 more seconds to type your question. I always like to give people plenty of wait time. I find that sometimes, especially in webinars, people don't like dead air. So they rush on, and by the time I've finished typing my question, they've already decided there isn't one. So make sure that you all have plenty of time to write your questions if you have them. But I'm not seeing any coming in. So we'll move back to the handout and take a look at tip number 3, which is a color coding system. So human beings are very visual creatures, right? Something like 40% of our brain is dedicated to visual processing. So using color can help you find your stuff faster. It's just going to be a basic principle of how your brain works. So I try to use colors to identify folders that I know I'm going to need in the short term. And I try to group them together using the same color so that things that hang together have the same color coding. So for example, these 2 folders in my Google Drive are both colored green because they are related to each other. This one is specifically like a broad category of Google stuff that I've done training on. And you can see that I've been doing trainings on Google stuff since August 25th of 2014. And then this one is related. It's specifically about Google Forms. And I don't know why I didn't put that folder within this folder. I probably should, but they're separate right now, but they're related because it's about Google Forms. So I have them color coded the same color. And I recommend that you come up with a scheme for how you want to organize your stuff. and use colors to help you just immediately see on the page the thing you're looking for. And to do that, when you want to color code something, you just right click on it, or if you're on a Mac, I think it's Control click, and then you can change the color. So if I wanted to color code all of Department of Ed stuff's pink, I could do that this way. And Marilyn asks if they are together next to each other in the drive because they are green, and the answer to that question is no. Google Drive organizes stuff alphabetically, and they just happen to be next to each other in the alphabet. Jody has a question. If I change the color of a shared folder, does it change the color for everyone or just me? I have not tested this, Jody, but I believe the answer to that question is just you, because I'm pretty sure that the interface, the view interface that other people see is their own. But you could test that by looking at the ABE Fall Manager Meeting folder and see if it changed pink when I color coded it pink. But I'm pretty sure that that's correct. I actually haven't 100% tested it to be sure, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. And Lindsay is sharing in the chat that yes, you share a lot of folders and you have your own color coding system with your colleagues and they don't overlap. So thank you for confirming, Lindsay. I've never actually asked anybody that I share things with if they're seeing my colors, so I wasn't 100% sure. All right, and just so you know, you can also color code. I think you can color code individual documents too. Let me see if that's true. No, it isn't, because they have their own icons. You can't do that. I lied. All right, back to our handout and tip number 4, which is stars. So stars are like favorites, right? So just like you might in your web browser bookmark or make a favorite of your favorite websites that you refer back to all the time, starred documents are going to be those things that you return to time and again, and you always need to have them handy, and you don't want to lose track of them. So I have, if we go over here on my left-hand side, I can open up my starred folder, and I have a few folders that I've starred because they are things that I have, I use frequently on a day-to-day basis. And also a few things that I have a tendency to lose, such as the newsletter planning grid, which Marisa shared with me, and I need it periodically to schedule things to go in the ABE Connect newsletter. But I'm telling you, I have no recollection of where that document actually lives, but I can always find it because it's in my starred materials. So these are handy, they're accessible, no matter what folder I have open, no matter where in my Google Drive I navigate to, my starred documents are always there. And you can make both folders and files starred. And this is particularly helpful, I think, with stuff that is shared with you. If you don't want to go through the process of putting a shortcut to your drive for something, but you're going to refer back to this thing again and again and again, put it in your starred list. So to do that, you are going to right click on a file. I'm actually going to go to recent stuff. You're going to right click on a file like the slides from this morning's opening session and add it to starred. And you get the little pop-up saying you've done that, and you can undo it if you got the wrong file and didn't mean to. And now if I go to my starred list, it's going to show up there, just like that. All right. And Lindsay's just chatting about the spreadsheet for the ABE Connect. She never remembers where it is either. Yeah, and Laura, yes. So, you know, you thought you knew where you put something, or somebody, you know, put something in one folder and then decided that they were going to move it or reorganize it. Things do have a tendency to migrate around if they're not your own stuff, if somebody else is the owner of it. And your starred list never never meanders away from its home. It's always in your starred list. I'm seeing people in the chat saying, Lydia says, I did not know that you could color code folders. My life is forever changed. See, this is why we do this session, right? Because it's a simple thing. It's something that has a potential to really help you. But if you don't know it's there, you don't know it's there, and it's not going to be helpful to you. So what's the line about the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns? If you don't even know that you don't know a thing, you're never going to go search it out and find it. So that is the advantage to coming to a session like this one. All right, we're going to move back. We are 22 minutes in out of 45, and we are at tip number 5. So we are making really good time, which means there's time for your questions. So if you have any, feel free to throw them in the chat or raise your hand and we'll call on you. Make use of the recent list and the date view options. And this is actually 2 things in one. It's 2 tips. So we'll look at both of them. But they're sort of related, because they're both about when was the last time you looked at a thing or opened a thing. So when you're working in your drive and you're looking at your list of files, one of the things that you'll see is this column here that says last modified. And last modified by default is modified by anyone, not you personally, anybody. So the last time I modified something might have been a year ago, but if I shared it with somebody else and they just worked on it today, it will show up as the last modified date, even though I haven't worked on it in a while. So that can be helpful if you want to see who's working on stuff, shared projects, that kind of thing. But if I'm trying to find something and I'm thinking, you know, I just worked on this thing last week, it's got to be here somewhere, and I don't want to see the stuff that other people have done, I just want to see what I did, I need to change this filter. I need to change it to last modified by me, right? Not last modified by anybody else. And now I can see I've got tons of stuff in here that's really old, because when I clicked it, it did the directionality. It went from oldest stuff to most recent. I'm going to flip that and go from most recent to oldest. And so that can help me find stuff that I've worked on. These folders, I haven't created the folders, so it's a little bit wonky in this view, because you're seeing when was the folder created. It's a little bit more helpful when you're looking at specific files. So let's say I go into this folder and I change this to last modified by me in order here. Now I can see these are the dates I worked on those things. I didn't actually work on this thing at all, or this one, or this one. These are the items I've worked on. And you can also see last opened by me, if you wanted to see the things that you've opened, but not actually modified. And this interfaces then with this other piece over here on the left-hand sidebar, which is recent. And so recent is exactly what it says, stuff you've recently opened or edited. And so this is showing all the files in chronological history of you opening them, with today's stuff at the top, and then this past week, and then this past month, and so on. And it'll actually show you who the owner is over here. So the folder sorting that you see here on your drive interfaces with the recent, but recent is always just the stuff you've been working on, but your Google Drive is not unless you tell it that it's just the stuff you've been working on. All right, what have we got in the chat? Laura says we need to put a tracker on our files and folders. They seem to disappear and then mysteriously reappear. Disappearing and then reappearing, I'm not sure. I mean, it's possible that the owner of a thing deleted it, trashed it, and then realized that they shouldn't have done that and then restored it. That would make a file disappear and then come back if you were not the owner and somebody else did that with a file. Other than that, not sure why something would just disappear and then come back. In your personal files, well, that's not good, Laura. If somebody else isn't accessing your account and trashing things, then I don't know if I can help you. All right, so any questions on sort of sorting things and finding things in recent, stuff like that? And again, give a little wait time for everybody to type your question. If you have any questions, I know I'm going fast because we only have 45 minutes. So I'm gonna rush too much. I want to give everybody a chance to ask any questions they might have. I am not seeing any come in, so we will go back to our handout and look at tip number 6, which is thinking about a way to organize folder and file names to override the default Google Drive, which is just alphabetizing stuff. So as Marilyn asked earlier, are those two folders next to each other because I coded them both green? No, they're just alphabetical. Google Drive by default organizes everything alphabetically, and that's true in your starred folder. That's true in your recent folder. Actually, not true in recent folder. Recent is actually strictly about chronological history, but starred does organize by alphabetical, and so does your drive and every folder in your drive. And that's fine if you remember what you call things. It is not great if you have a really big complex project and you don't remember what all the things are called. And you might want to have a system that is organized more topically or in order of things that need to happen, like project, step 1, step 2, step 3 of a project. And you don't want them listed alphabetically. You want them in the meaningful order that you have in mind. So the way that you can do that if you are naming things in Google Drive is to use a numerical system when you make your files and folders. So if I make, I'm gonna make a new folder and I'm going to name it 1.1 planning documents, right? Which might be the folder name I would use if I'm starting a brand new project and I'm just getting things plotted out. And then I might make another new folder that would be 1.2 resources or something. And now they're going to be organized at the top of my Google Drive, because in an alphabetized system, anything that's numerical floats to the top. So all the numbered stuff goes above anything letter A. And because I did 1.1, 1.2, they're in that sequence. And you can do that within folders, and you can do that with files as well to keep things in sequence. And I recommend doing 1.1, 1.2 if possible, if you have a big project at all, because otherwise, once you get to 9 and you start numbering at 10, they will get out of sequence because you'll have 1 and then 10 and then 2. So if your project has more than 9 things in it, you want to do a system like this with 1.1, 1.2. And that will help you keep your stuff in sequence. And Edgar is saying in the chat, there was a time I deleted a file I didn't want to have anymore, and then months later it somehow reappeared. I have no idea why that would happen. Maybe somebody made a duplicate of it and shared it back with you. Don't know how that would have happened. Yeah, but thinking about organizing stuff, another thing you can do is actually you can see a file folder in my drive here that this was set up to always float to the top of my list no matter what. And that is the person who I was collaborating with didn't want to lose this folder. So she renamed the folder with 2 asterisks and then a space and then the name of the project. And that means that those asterisks, they also get alphabetized ahead of any numbers and any letters. So that folder always floats to the top of my drive. You can't lose it that way. So if you have a folder you just absolutely cannot risk not being able to find, and you always want it prominent in your Google Drive, if you rename it with a couple of asterisks like this at the beginning of the name, it will always float to the top of your alphabetical listing and you won't be able to lose it. I'm actually going to delete these folders because I don't need them. They were just examples. And Jody is asking, renaming a shared folder renames it for everyone. Changing the color doesn't. Yes, that is correct, Jody. If you rename a shared folder or a file, for that matter, the name applies to everybody who has that file or that folder. But the color scheme, organizing, and the starring of things, those are unique to your particular instance of Google Drive. Yep, good question though. Any other questions in the chat about naming things in order to try and organize them? Not seeing any questions coming in, but feel free to keep typing if you are typing. We have about 15 minutes left. We have 3 tips. We are right on schedule. Look at us. We are masters of the clock today. All right, so tip number 7 is preview. And preview is a feature in Google Drive that lets you open up sort of a peek into the file without actually opening the file. And you can do this in a way to flip through all of the files in a folder. So this is particularly useful if you know You remember what something looks like or what the content in it is, but you don't remember what it's named. So if I go into a folder, let's say I'm going to go into my NGen folder here. And there's a bunch of stuff in this folder. And there's some spreadsheets and some forms, and there's a bunch of documents, and I don't remember what it is that I'm looking for. If I right-click on one of these and I preview it, it shows up like this. So it's sort of floating in front of my drive. It didn't open in a new window like it normally would if I were opening the file. You can still see my drive is still open here in the background. It's sort of a image of the document rather than an open editable version of the document. And if I said, oh yeah, this is the file, that's the one I want, up here I can say open with, and then I can open that document and actually edit it. But if it's not the one I want, but I know the one I want is somewhere in this folder, I can start flipping through all the files here in preview mode. So I can just advance to the next document, and the next document, and the next one, and I can keep looking. And sometimes files take a little bit longer to open in preview because they're image rich or something. So that one took a little time. This is the spreadsheet. No, the form. No, not that. Not that. What am I looking for? Where is it? Right. And I'm just flipping through all these documents until I find the thing. Like, yes, this is the one, the meeting notes. And then I can say, open with Google Docs. And now I've got the file. And you can actually flip through all those files in preview mode just using the left and right arrow keys on your folder on your keyboard, as well as those on-screen navigation buttons. So I like that feature when I'm trying to find something quickly. I'm going to know it when I see it, but I don't remember what it's called. And so I'll just preview and I'll flip through until I find the thing I want. Oh, Laura has to go. Goodbye, Laura. Drive safe. Stay warm and cozy out there. All right, yeah. I really like that whole preview feature. I find it super useful and handy to try and find things quickly when I don't remember what they're called. Unfortunately, there is one change that has been made to Google Drive since the last time I did this presentation. And it used to be true that if you previewed a file, it did not show up in your recent folder. That is no longer true. So it used to be that if you didn't want to clutter up your recent folder with stuff that you didn't actually use, you just were previewing it to see if it was the right thing, that those things wouldn't show up here in recent. That has changed in the last year or two. And so you'll see now, if I look at my recent folder, it's all those things in that NGen folder that I just flipped through in preview mode. So that is, I'm sure they intended that to be a helpful thing. Google Drive must assume that we want all those things in our recent folder. I personally find that it was better the other way, because when I'm previewing a bunch of stuff and I'm just flipping through the folder, I'm not actually looking for those things. Those are things I'm trying to exclude from my list of recent stuff. But they changed that feature and it no longer works that way. So that's too bad. And you'll see them up here at the top of your Google Drive too. Things that you just recently have been working on also float up here. So it can be a bit of a pain if you flip through a bunch of things in preview mode and now they're all showing up suggested documents because you were just looking at them in preview. But it's still helpful, even though I think it's gotten slightly less user-friendly with that change. All right, let's see. The second to last tip is the search options in Google Drive. If you are in your Google Drive and you are trying to find something, and you really, none of these other tips are helping you. Like, I just can't find this thing. Search is probably your, tool of last resort. But Google being what it is, they started out as a search engine, right? And their search tools are still top-notch. They have really great search tools, especially if you take the time to use advanced search features. So by default, if you're going to search in your Drive, you can search by type of document and just type in a title. So Google Forms, right? But in addition to that, you can open up search options here that can really help you narrow your search down and be more effective in finding the thing you want. So you can search for type of document. You can search by the owner. By default, it's anyone. But if you know for sure, yes, this is a thing I made, or you know for sure, no, somebody else made this and shared it with me. Or if you happen to know the specific person. So if I know that there's a specific file that Brad sent to me, I can search for things that Brad sent to me, that he created. You can search by keywords and item names, of course. And you can decide where you want to search. So you could just search trashed things or starred things, for example. And you can also search for things that were modified in a particular date range. But I think these up at the top, the owner, and especially if you know the specific owner, those are probably the most useful search tools I've found, because I have so many files, and if I'm trying to search for something, I still might get 50 results when I search for something. But by narrowing it down to who made the file, I have a much better chance of actually finding the thing. So now I'm just seeing presentations that I have access to that were created by Brad. And I can go through and quickly look through that list instead of just trying to search by keyword and finding 100 different things. And then I want to clear all that. Drive. All right, we are at 2 minutes left. And then the last one is just really thinking about sharing options. And I wanted to put in a little plug for making human readable shortcuts to documents. This is particularly helpful if you are putting it on a slide or a handout and you want other people to find your file, because of course the file name is going to be something like this: docs.google.com/document/ blah 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 blah. And that is not readable by a human being. So if you want to share that document verbally with people or on a slide deck or something, a shortcut is to use a URL shortener. I particularly like tinyurl.com. I can attest that these tiny URLs last indefinitely. I did this session with this handout at the 2019 Support Services Conference, and I made this tiny URL at that time, and I tested it for this session today, 3 years later, and the tiny URL still works. So I really like tinyURL for a variety of reasons. And I just think that if you're trying to share things and tell people where to find stuff, making it human readable is the way to go. And I think tinyURL is pretty easy to use. You just copy and paste the link in, and you can type in what you want your URL to be, and it'll just generate that link for you. So super handy, free, easy to use, and makes things a lot easier to share. And that is 2:45. I see 2:46, so we're 1 minute over. Thank you so much for coming today, and I hope that you got at least one of the tips that will help you wrangle your Google Drive.